literally everything was on the line in that moment, and that's what made it hard. So you know how you can like know your values and know your why and know all these things, and you think you're gonna like stick by them and live them, and then all of a sudden they're tested. I think like all of us have had that happen to us, and after 3 years of hearing no, we got one shot, we got a yes, and we got one shot on QVC. It's a crazy story. So I go into it in the book on how it happened and how we finally got the yes and all this stuff. But what it meant though is we had one shot in this 10
If it didn't sell, you're never coming back on.
You're never coming back. And it's live. So
I want to start with Oprah.
yeah.
Talk to me about the importance of Oprah in your life, especially growing up.
Yeah, growing up, always as a little girl, I'd sit in my living room and watch her on television. And it was how I knew, like, oh, one day I'd watch her interview other people and share their stories with the world. And I thought that's the coolest thing. And her sharing her pain, sharing her, I mean, at the time she was doing this, there was no social media, right? People weren't sharing their stories behind their stories. And she was one of the first people that went out there and said, like, let me bare my soul and reveal all the stuff that most people are embarrassed about, embarrassed to share, ashamed of. And she really, I think, did that. And I remember, I don't know if you'll remember this moment, but I think it was 9 years old. I was 9 years old when she was interviewed by Barbara Walters. And she said to her on national television, she said, I always knew I was destined for greatness. And I remember after Oprah said that, I remember Evan sitting there as a little girl going, I know that feeling, like that feeling that a lot of us have inside of us, like we're made for more. And if we can just break through our own self-doubt, right? Like we know we have things to give the world or to create or to offer or to inspire. I remember having that feeling as a little girl when I heard her say that. And I also remember she got a ton of backlash in the press for it because a lot of people weren't used to somebody, especially a woman, but somebody saying like, I'm destined for greatness and I've always had this feeling. So when she said that, I remember, watching the media's response to that, but I also remember connecting with it. And I think like one of the things that's so inspiring about what you do, Evan Carmichael, every single day is like you also inspire other people to believe, right? And for me growing up, that's what Oprah did for me. And so I had no idea I would one day meet her. I had no idea she'd become a real life mentor in my life. She was one of the very first people to read my book cover to cover. I wanted her blessing on it because there's some stuff I share in there that like 95% of this book, believe it, is stuff I've never shared before. And so there's some Oprah stuff in there, and I wanted her blessing before I share it. So yeah, she's in all the days I was a Denny's waitress and working at Safeway grocery store, pushing shopping carts, I don't know if I could have ever dreamed that I would even just be here live with you. I don't know that I could have even imagined this, dreamed of this, being here with you, or saying to you these words. Oprah was the first person to read the book. But I made the decision to believe it, which is, I think it's time for everyone. We've been in a dark season. It's been a tough 14 months for a lot of people. And a lot of us have let our light dim. We've forgotten to believe in ourselves. We've forgotten we have a light inside of us at all. So my whole hope and prayer for this book is it reignites that light and that ability and just self-belief again, because a lot of people need to start dreaming again and believing that things are possible.
One of my favorite Oprah stories from Believe It is you're about to go on QVC and you're stressing out because you only have 10 minutes and you've bought all this inventory that's kind of make or break, and you want to do it your way and show real people and show your real face with the skin issues that you had, and everybody's telling you no, it's the wrong thing, and you drive to the parking lot and you're sitting outside QVC, and then you imagine Oprah and Color Purple and how she manifested that. Take us a little deeper into that story.
Yeah. I feel like, thank you for asking that question. I feel like there's probably people that follow you and there's stories you share, and then they grab onto those, right? And they tap in. We can all tap into other people's stories to give us strength. And it's really why I wrote this book too, is because my prayers, all the stories and struggles and lessons I've gone through, hopefully someone else can grab onto those and use them in their own journey. So yeah, one of those big stories was after 3 years of hearing no from all the beauty retailers, all the department stores, right? I created a product that I believed in. And a lot of people watching us right now, maybe that are entrepreneurs or that are creating something, and maybe you're in a space where you're like not getting the traction you hoped, or you're having people tell you no or not believe in you. That was my journey for 3 years. So everyone had been telling us no. QVC had said no time after time after time. And we finally got this big break, Evan. We finally got this big break, and we were going to get one shot on QVC. And it meant we had this 10-minute window to either sell our product and hit the sales goal or not come back, right? And just to give everyone a little bit of context, QVC's live television shopping channel would broadcast to 100 million homes. And at the time, Evan, we were still just selling 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, barely staying alive. 3 years into the business, hearing no after no after no after no, not knowing if we're going to make it. And we get this one shot to go live in this 10-minute window. And so I'm like, okay. And then I learned it's a consignment deal, which means that we're not pay. So we have to pay for all the inventory, right, to make it, ship it in. And then we go on air and we're only paid for what sells. And I learned then that we would need to sell over 6,000 units of our product to hit the sales goal in a 10-minute window. So 6,000 units in this 10-minute window. Meanwhile, Evan, I'm like, eat like it was a date night. Me and my husband would have a date night if it was like the $1 hot dogs at Costco. And I don't know if you've ever been to a Costco and the outdoor hot dog stand, and you go there and it's $1 for a hot dog, and they're good hot dogs, but like that's as fancy as we were down, right? And so to figure out, okay, wow, everything's on the line for our business, we have to figure out how we had to borrow money. We got turned away from 22 banks. It was the 23rd bank that said yes, which is a small bank in California, gave us an SBA loan just to cover the amount of inventory to do this one airing on QVC. So everything was on the line. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so much for me to handle. It felt so heavy. And I flew out to QVC, which is just outside of Philadelphia, a week before we got this one shot to go live. And I knew in that one shot, we were either my whole life would be changed, or we were going to go bankrupt and out of business. And it felt so heavy, and here's why. We hired third-party consultants who are amazing at helping people sell on television and sell their products in stores and all those things, and they help so many people. And they all told me the same thing. They said, if you're going to have a shot at succeeding in this 10-minute window, here's what you need to do. You need to put this type of model on the air, which was all women with perfect skin. And I said to them, but the authentic reason I started this company is because I don't have perfect skin. Like I have bright red rosacea. It gets bumpy everywhere. And I'm like, I created this product because there's so many people out there like me who can't find anything that works. I'm like, QVC is alive. You can't fake it. You can't Photoshop it. I'm like, I want to go on television and like prove it live. You have to remember, Evan, this is before Instagram Live. This is before YouTube, right? And I was like, and no one was doing this. I'm like, let me just take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea. Let me prove live how this product works. And I had this vision of putting real women of all different ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin problems and all this stuff. And let me show live on them. And these expert consultants were mortified. Like, they're like, listen, and they wanted the best for me, but they're like, if you're getting one shot and we want you to win, and here's what you need to do. You need to put this type. Women will only buy makeup from people who have perfect skin, who they'll never be able to look like. And so I was being told this message, and I feel like every one of us in our life, we have moments in our life where our gut instinct is telling us one thing, and other people are telling us another. Other experts are telling us another. Other, people's opinions, or the world that maybe we're not having success in our business yet, that lack of traction makes us feel like maybe our gut instinct's wrong. So the moment you're talking about, I flew out a week ahead of time, a week before this 10-minute window. I sat in the QVC parking lot and I sat in this rental car all alone. And I just stared at the front door of QVC. And I knew the next time I walked through that door, my whole life was going to change, or I was going to be bankrupt and my whole life was going to change for that, that way. And I just sat there praying and crying. And then it felt heavy. And I felt like, okay, it's easy in life for us to know what we stand for, but then like often our values are put on the line. Do you know what I mean? And I was in this moment of going, and honestly, self-doubt started to enter my head. I'm like, I had thoughts of like, oh, well, I don't want to go bankrupt. So maybe if I listen to them and do it their way, the third-party consultants, if I do it their way to start with, and then I have success, and then I try it my way. I had all these thoughts. But I also know you can't fake authenticity. I also know the second you show up as who other people want you to be, you create a barrier of disconnection between you and any other human being, including an audience, including your customers, right? So I knew that. And I sat in that car freaking out every day for a week. And I prayed and I cried. And then I'm like, what would Oprah do? And I remember a show where she said she wanted the color purple so bad that she ran around a track and was praying the song I Surrender All and crying. And so I started singing I Surrender All, and I literally asked God to take it from me because it felt so heavy. And I also just remembered, who is this person I'm talking to? If I'm going to have one shot in 10 minutes on QVC, like I imagined, for some reason, I kept imagining a single mom, like folding laundry, who was too busy to remember that she mattered and too busy to remember that she's beautiful. And I just thought about, like, if I was going to get the blessing of 2 seconds of her time and she was going to turn on her television and see me live on QVC, I wanted her to look up and see other women who look like her and see me calling them beautiful and meaning it, even if she didn't buy a single thing. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to stand for something than sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And that's really what it came down to. But sometimes we know what we need to do, but when it's the hard thing, it's hard. And I walked in that building for that 10-minute airing, and it was like one of the scariest things I've ever done, because it just felt so heavy. I was dripping sweat everywhere. I was a hot mess, to be honest. And like, I wasn't nervous for television, but I was nervous that my whole company was on the line. And I remember the 10-minute clock started, and it was like 9:59, 9:58. And we were live in front of 100 million homes. And I remember the moment my bright red bare face before shot came up, and then we walked over to all the models, and I showed all different women of different ages and skin tones and skin types and all sizes and shapes. And I remember there was about a minute left in the presentation, and the host started saying the shades were selling out. The deep shade is down to 100 units, and the tan. And I was just like, and then when the 10-minute mark hit and the sold out sign came right up across. Yes, that moment right there. I literally started sobbing.
34, everybody. 30.
So, I think that in life, and listen, I've learned so much from experts. I continue to every single day. I am a lifetime student. And anytime I get advice from an expert, I think it's so important, or anybody, a friend, a family member, I think it's so important we check in with our gut and go, is that advice right for me? And I think our gut is always stronger than anyone else's advice. And our gut will tell us what the right advice is to listen to. And that was a life-changing moment for me. On the page you just showed. And when I look back at so many of the mistakes I made, they were when I didn't listen to my own gut and started to second guess myself. And a big reason I wrote Believe It is really just to talk about how do you go from, because, my story, a lot of people think, oh, it's Denny's waitress turned $1 billion entrepreneur. But my real story is a girl who didn't believe in herself and figured out how to, and didn't trust myself and learn how to tune in and hear my own intuition and trust it. And I just know it's the story of so many other people out there right now, watching us live right now, who I see in the comments. We're all on this journey in life, I think, of really learning, as you would say, Evan, to to believe in ourselves and everything else.
You know what's interesting? There's a meme online of a kid of a little child learning to walk, and it says something like, when a child is learning to walk, they fall over hundreds of times, and they hit their head and they scrape their knee and they cry and these things. But at no point do they think maybe this walking thing isn't for me. They don't say, I'm just going to crawl for the next 80 years of my life and just crawl everywhere. They eventually keep getting up and they learn to walk. They balance, they hold on to something, right?
Yeah.
You've got kids, and so you've seen this firsthand. They never stop trying to walk. Why do you think we as adults stop trying to walk into our dreams or into opportunities when we hit ourselves one time, we fall one time? Why do you think we stop when as kids we never did when we were learning to walk?
I think I've never answered this question before, so I'm just going to pour it right out to you, my like how I really feel about that. I think kids have a knowing inside, an instinct. They want to walk, and they just think that they're going to figure it out. They see people around them walking, and they just do it. It's like a knowing, and nothing's telling them not to trust themselves. And I think that as we grow up, I think that everything around us starts to tell us not to trust ourselves. Like self-doubt is so huge. We get and just to use my own example, and some of the stories that I share for the first time ever in the book is like, it's like when you're in the spot of all the experts telling you they don't believe in you, or it could be other people's opinions, right, telling you they don't believe in you. It could be literally no proof of your own dream or idea that it's going to be successful, right? In those first 3 years of this journey of It Cosmetics, there was no proof. It was like no signs, right? Other than women were starting to post their own befores and afters and spread the word online, which was great.
So you were getting some sales.
Yeah, we were doing about 2 to 3 orders a day on our website.
Were you doing were you going and showing it in person at a live events? Were you doing QVC at this point?
No, not. So QVC was our big first yes, and probably the biggest life and business decision, lesson I've ever learned. Was
when did that come? After 3 years?
Yeah, after 3 years.
So the first 3 years, were you going to grocery stores and
I tried
everything, going to the fairground,
any trade
and anything,
show, anything online. We
Farmers
couldn't afford
markets.
to advertise.
Right.
Any different beauty event. I mean, we would. My friends and family would walk into any Ulta or Sephora and be like, and they knew they didn't carry them, but they'd be like, "Can I talk to the manager? Do you carry It Cosmetics?"
Yeah.
They're like, "It what?" Like, "Oh, It Cosmetics is so good," and they would try to hustle for us.
It's very Sarah Blakely-esque, where her friends would go and place orders and make it all sell out.
It was that. It was just trying to hustle. And the other thing is all the no's, like every time Sephora or QVC or Ulta would say no, like that was one thing, is that I didn't take it personal, right? That was one, I did a lot of things wrong. That was one thing I did right. And the second they would say no, it hurt, it sucked, obviously. But it's like, okay, I would literally, Lewis, I would decide to believe like it's going to be a yes, and I behaved accordingly. Like I would say, okay, thank you, but one day it will be a yes, and I'm so excited for when that happens. And then what I would do is every time we get like a press placement, or we would be launching a new product or whatever, I would send that buyer who kept saying no, and I'd be like, great news, we just got, in this magazine or whatever, and like one day when your customers get to try this in their store, they're gonna love it. And I think they probably thought I was crazy, but I just decided to believe.
You've got to be relentless in following up too.
Yeah.
You can't just hope that they find out about you. You've got to constantly be following up the way you did, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to look at the magazine and see it. They're not going to see your sales numbers unless you tell them over and over again.
Yeah. And I know you're big on LinkedIn and everything. I would literally scour LinkedIn for any person who worked at Sephora or Ulta or QVC.
Friend them and message
everything,
them.
and then try to send them a sample. I mean, it was like everybody. It was. And we couldn't afford to hire anybody, so we got so lean and so scrappy that like in the early years, my middle name's Marie, and so Marie got her own email address. So Marie at itcosmetics.com was like head of customer service, and I would pitch all the Good Morning America. I'd be like, our founder's available for, you know what I mean? It was just like hustling and trying to figure it out. And every time I would check in with my gut, though, no matter how many times I got knocked down, like I still, even though there's no proof around me, I still kept feeling like this was what I was supposed to do. And I made the decision to trust it. through those years of no proof around me. And that's the hard thing. And I feel like when you talk about why does a little kid keep trying to walk, but why do most of us just give up? I feel like I feel like so many people either have never heard their own gut or haven't heard it in a long time. And then sometimes we hear it and we don't trust ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And instead of putting our own intuition on a pedestal, we put things like other people's opinions or what our partner's telling us to do or our own self-doubt or what the experts are saying or the lack of proof of success around us. And
how do you think we learn to trust ourselves more?
I think that we have to want to. I think we have to make the decision that we need to want to. And that's hard because you know what? The truth is it's way easier to stay in our comfort zone. It's way easier to make the circle around us happy and comfy and not fearful. It's way easy. And I think that chips away at our soul when we do that. I think every person knows, like I think we know deep down inside if we're created for more and we're supposed to give more, if we have more inside of us to give or to serve or to love or to live. I think we all know that deep down inside. And I think that if we don't do something about it, I think it chips away at our soul. And I think we end up literally talking ourselves out of our own truth and literally never becoming the person we're born to be. I know that sounds dramatic, but I think it's true. And I think that I think that's the easy route. So I think the first thing is you have to want to.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to take a lot of courage to overcome your fears and go into that stuff too. I'm curious, the first time you went on QVC, what was that experience like for you? Do you felt like you had, a few years of building confidence under your belt, or were you extremely nervous right before that first experience?
Literally everything was on the line in that moment, and that's what made it hard. So you know how you can like know your values and know your why and know all these things, and you think you're gonna like stick by them and live them, and then all of a sudden they're tested. I think like all of us have had that happen to us, and after 3 years of hearing no, we got one shot, we got a yes, and we got one shot on QVC. It's a crazy story. So I go into it in the book on how it happened and how we finally got the yes and all this stuff. But what it meant though was we had one shot in this 10
If it didn't sell, you're never coming back on.
You're never coming back. And it's live, so there's no script. And QVC is, as you know, but maybe not everyone knows, it's a live television channel to broadcast to 100 million homes, and you have to, you're measured in dollars per minute, and so their airtime, it's not like a store where you walk in and you can see thousands of products. Only one product can be live on the air at that moment. So you're not just competing with beauty brands, you're competing with Apple iPhone and Dyson vacuum and Vitamix, all the stuff to hit a certain sales. So we got one shot and 10 minutes. And it was a consignment deal. So what that meant was we had to manufacture all the product, pay for it, et cetera, get it all shipped in there.
Yeah, they don't buy any of it.
No, not in beauty at the time. And then whatever, and then if it didn't sell, we would take it all back without being paid, go out of business. And at the time we were doing just, as 2 to 3 orders a day on our website. And what I learned was we'd have to sell over 6,000 units of our product in a 10-minute window to hit their sales goal or not come back. And so Paulo and I together, and Paulo, which is why I say his name, applied for 22 SBA loans and got rejected. It was the 23rd one in California, actually, that gave us an SBA loan just to cover the cost of the inventory for this one shot on QVC. So you should never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose. But at this point, 3 years in, it was like...
It's like make it or break it.
Make it or break it.
We're going all in, or we're dying on the sword.
Exactly. And so we said yes and did everything. We hired third-party consultants, and this is where everything I believed in was put on the line. And they're awesome, and they help a lot of people, right? So they help people sell on QVC and retail stores.
They gave you a different
amazing
strategy that wasn't what you wanted to do, probably.
Right, exactly. They're
all like, this is what you need, and you need this perfect model, and they need to be speaking this way, they need to look a certain way.
Because that's what had always been done, and that's what had always worked. And so they wanted the best for me. They were smart and wanted me to win. And they're like, okay, here's what you need to do. Use models with perfect skin, all this. And I would say, okay, but Like, that's not why I created this. And what if and this was pre-YouTube exploding. So I'm like, what if I go on air and just take my makeup off, like on live TV, and show my rosacea, like, and what if I put, put models that all different ages and sizes, skin challenges, skin tones, everything. And they were mortified. Like, they're like,
no, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, and
you're going to lose it all. Yeah.
And I would say, okay, but if I'm sitting at home and I'm watching and I don't see someone that looks like me, how do I know the product is going to work for me? And but it's really hard when your gut is telling you one thing, experts are telling you another. It's like I couldn't try it both ways. So I flew out to QVC a week before our airing, our one shot, and this might sound crazy to you, but I got a rental car. I sat all alone in the QVC parking lot for a week, every day, just like watching the front door of the building, knowing the next time I go in, like, I'm either going to walk out with out of business, crazy. Or with, and I sat there and I prayed and I cried, and it felt really heavy, to be honest, because I didn't.
It's a big moment.
A big moment, because it was like, okay, I'm not nervous for TV, but it was like it felt like everything was on the line, and I tried to imagine who my customer was, who was watching it, like, why am I doing what I'm doing, all these things. I remember at one point channeling Oprah. I was like, okay, I remember this time when Oprah was obsessed with the color purple. She told the story on her show, and she wanted it so bad that it consumed her, and she ran around a track and just saying, I surrender all, and asked God to take it from her, because she just couldn't carry it herself. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try that. So I sat in the car, like literally singing I surrender all and crying. I also was imagining, you might do this, I was imagining, like, okay, Olympians, I think that they imagine like what happened. Yeah. And so I was visualizing the sold out sign coming up across the screen. I was, all those things. I was sitting in the car, just doing everything that I could. And I also just had this moment where I imagined this woman sitting at home, and if I was going to be blessed enough for her to turn her TV on for 5 seconds, like, what did I want to stand for, right? It was like, okay, if she's going to give me her precious time, even if she buys nothing, I'd rather her look at the TV and see me showing real women and calling them beautiful and meaning it, because you can't fake authenticity, meaning it. And I'd rather have her for a moment feel like she's seen and like she matters and sell nothing than stand for nothing and sell a shitload of product and hit a sales goal. Right. And so it was this moment where I just kind of knew. But sometimes we know what the right thing is, but it's also the hard thing, and it's scary.
It's like being in the wrong relationship and your gut's telling you get out, but everyone's like, oh, but they look great on paper, or
and my parents are happy, or this or that.
Yeah, you're like, but I'm torn.
Yes. I feel like everything comes down to our knowing and trusting it in life. And so many people are like, oh, how'd you sell your business for whatever, $1 billion? Like, oh no, that's not the victory. The victory is if we're trusting ourselves and our knowing and where we're supposed to be on our journey. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the victory. And it's like every time I don't do that, that's when I make big mistakes. And when I look back, and that's when I stayed in wrong relationships. That's when I kept employees on too long. That's when all those things. So I'm walking in the QC building and I go into the studio, and there's cameras like we see right now. I know that the second the on-air light goes on, it's
go time.
Live. Yeah, go time. Wow. Live to 100 million homes, and there's this 10-minute clock. And here's what I learned right before, okay? I learned, you're not guaranteed 10 minutes.
Oh, if it's not selling at 5, see ya.
So exactly. So you might be a minute or two in, and if you're not in real time doing well, hitting the goals, it jumps. Like, your clock might go from 8 minutes, boom, you're down at 2 minutes, and you're like, and you if you try to sell, nothing sells. You know what I mean? And it's just
if
like,
you're forcing it, then people can feel it.
You can feel it, and you cannot fake authenticity. That's the thing. So it was like, okay.
How do you get sales in 2 minutes if they're not seeing sales when you haven't even told the story of the product
I know, exactly. You have to be so just I know. And so, and I had prepared so hard for this. Like
The consultants taught you how to pitch and how to position and tell the story within a certain time frame and everything.
Yeah, and I literally thought, I walked in there thinking, okay, here's what I'm going to say off the top. Here's how I'm going to do this. And I didn't listen to consultants in terms of models. I'm like, I'm going to show real women all those things. But I'm like, here's how I'm going to do this demonstration on my wrist, all the stuff I had planned out. And then I did my host meeting a few minutes before the show, and she thanked me for my ideas and said, okay, but here's what we're gonna do. So literally scrapped everything.
So we're not doing that.
Nope. And I had, in that moment, I had to trust her, but I also had to just, like, I know, but they're so good. Oh,
they're pros.
They're such pros. Yeah, they know.
So you had a co-host with you.
Yeah, the QVC host, and then I'm there with the product. Yeah, like the entrepreneur, the founder, and she was amazing and all that. And but at that moment, like I remember the 10-minute clock, and I remember it was like 9:59, 9:58, and I remember like feeling my heart racing.
This is it.
Yeah, and it's so gross, but I remember like sweat.
Yeah.
I remember feeling sweat. And you would talk about how much we love Sarah Blakely. I was wearing 2 pairs of Spanx, and I remember feeling the sweat like dripping. I was like, okay, these Spanx are gonna save me because it's not gonna come through my dress. But then I also remember thinking like, I have to not make this about me or I'm done. It's like, okay, this is about, how do I want to shift culture and beauty? Who is that woman watching? Like, if she's going to bless me with her time, how am I going to show up for her? And I remember this moment where my bare face came up on national TV, and then I remember walking to the models, and I was shaking like a leaf. So I had planned this demonstration.
Just like 100 times in the mirror.
Yes, in
this
the
is somebody's gonna
mirror.
look. I'm gonna wipe this thing off. I'm gonna put this on. I'm gonna smile. Yeah.
Yes, and it was so good in my bathroom mirror. And then I'm trying to do this on national television, and this is my hand, literally. And the host grabs it, and she's like, "Thank you, sugar." And she took over, and we walked to all the models, and then I remember toward the very end of, I think it was like a minute left, and she's like, the deep shade is sold out, or the tan shade's almost gone, something like that.
Like what?
Yeah, and I was like, and then I remember at the 10-minute mark, the sold out sign came up across the screen, just like I had envisioned it in the car, in the parking lot. The sold out sign came up. I started crying.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and they cut, and I see Paulo my husband, coming running through the double doors at the studio, and I'm like sobbing loose. I'm like, real women have spoken. And he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And it was just like, and I was just like, ah. And that one airing turned into 5 that year, and then 101 the next year, and then we did
100?
And we did over 250 live shows a year for
crazy.
8 years. Yeah, so I did over 1,000 live QVC shows myself, but we also built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history, and it is right now. At this moment that you and I are talking, it's right now still largest beauty brand in QVC's history. And I only share that because it was 3 years of them saying, no, you're not the right fit, all those things, right? So it's like, at the end of the day, like, nobody can tell you you're not the right fit.
Yeah, and you also got to know the timing of, maybe if you'd done it 3 years earlier, you wouldn't have been ready.
Oh, totally.
Maybe if you're pitching it, you would have bombed, and you would have never had another chance. You never would have had another chance, and you would have been done. So sometimes the delayed of people saying no is good for you to figure out, okay, how can I become better? How can I be prepared? How can I sell more? How can I do these other things? So that's what I think we got to think about as well is, how are we going to set ourselves up for something when someone says no?
Yeah, and to not be afraid of it.
Exactly.
I mean, to not be afraid of rejection and not be afraid of doing it, imperfectly, any of that stuff. It's so important. Oh my gosh, if I ever got afraid of it, never was easy, but if I ever got afraid of rejection, I would have been done. Like, done. Would have never hopefully had, I hope I had an impact on the beauty industry. That would have never happened. I would have never built $1 billion business. You know what I mean? I think it's huge. And I think it comes down to this, is like just really trusting your knowing. You know what I mean? Every time somebody hurt me or said no or whatever, I would go back and be like, okay, another expert said no. Like, am I wrong? Is my gut wrong? Right? But every time I would get still and just know. And, for me, it's how I've never heard God talk to me, but like I feel, for me, it's faith is part of that. I hear it through my intuition. For other people, it's the universe. Like it's everything. And I just think, you mentioned relationships. I think that we all know if we're in the right relationship. Like in our gut, we know. And I mean, I don't think I have a single girlfriend in my life, including myself, who hasn't gone through a relationship where he's like sketchy, and you're like, oh, maybe his phone did break for 3 days. Maybe, like, right, it didn't break.
Right.
We all know. And I just think that we start to turn up the volume on all this noise in our life, how busy we are, other people's opinions, what our inner circle says, all the things, and we have the mute button on our own gut, and it goes on for so long that we start to not learn how to hear it. And so, for me, and it's not, and I believe everyone has a knowing, and I believe it's always right. And I think that like learning how to listen to it, how to trust it is a journey. It's a process.
I'm curious about...
do you do that in life though? Like with people or friendships, do you feel a knowing?
No, I feel it, yeah.
You feel it,
it's
right?
It's usually pretty quick for me. It's an intuition. But I also research people pretty extensively. And I look at everything. I look at things that they don't even think I might be looking at. And I learn a lot about people by doing research. So before I even speak to them, I'll kind of get a gut instinct. And then they really need to show me, whether convince me that I'm right or convince me that I'm wrong within connecting with them. And sometimes I've been wrong, very few, maybe 2 or 3 times out of thousands of people, where I was like, oh, the things I saw about them, I prejudged them in a way that wasn't accurate. And I took responsibility for that. But most of the time you can get a sense from people, whether you watch a couple of videos or just see what they're sharing or how they communicate. So
it's funny, I just get a feeling.
Yeah,
Because
me too.
I've met so many people that are amazing on video. And then I just get a feeling and I'm like, okay, so, and
yeah. Do I want them in my life that much? Yeah.
Well, and I just think that, listen, I think every single one of us, has miscalculations and misjudgments and makes mistakes and all that. And I don't believe we're our mistakes. I believe we're our intentions, And
Absolutely.
and
We can shift our intentions at any moment.
yeah, for sure.
I'm curious about a personal question. Have you felt more self-doubt before QVC or right now?
Before QVC, but I still feel it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a journey. I think that there's so many areas in my life I figured out how to overcome it, how to turn down the volume on it, how to believe in myself, and I try to apply those all the time. It's a lifelong journey, for me of believing where I come from doesn't determine where I'm going, of turning down like the volume on past mistakes or on miscalculations or that kind of thing, and believing that, I think at the end of the day, I think all of us, no matter where we're at in life, on a journey of it.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
of course.
And one thing that happened to me that I share in the book for the first time with Oprah's blessing. She read it cover to cover. She blessed what I shared in the book. But having said that, I talk about, the first time I ever met her, and then I talk about having lunch with her for the first time at her house, just one-on-one, me and her. And
So I was there the day you met her, right?
You were there.
First time. We were at an event, and you met her. I didn't meet her. But what was that like for you?
From the time I was a little girl sitting in my living room, right? I would sit in my living room watching Oprah every day, Monday through Friday, and her sharing her vulnerability, her sharing her, all the parts of her, not just the perfect part, right? All the parts. Like, she was my mentor who I'd never met. You know what I mean? Like, she helped me believe, like, oh, maybe my dreams are possible. Like, my whole life. So I don't get starstruck. And with It Cosmetics, and growing, and then especially the L'Oreal acquisition, you have a lot of celebrities that want deals. They want makeup deals. So just because of that, you meet so many. So I think everyone's human. I think we all have the same doubts, same fears, same insecurities,
Are
same
they
hopes.
going to like me? Do they see me? Do
All
they
the
think I'm
stuff.
interesting?
We're all the same.
Yeah.
So I knew all that, right? And so the day that I met Oprah was at that event in LA, and it was a surprise. I didn't know it was happening. It's a long story, so I go into how it happened in the book too. But I ended up going into her green room, where it was just me and her, and I had never met her, and she's like, Miss Kern, and I'm like,
Wow.
I'm freaking out.
Wow.
I was so out of my body in that thing. I literally just prayed for the right words, and all I could say was like, can you let me know if I can ever be of service to you? Like, I didn't know what, like, I didn't, it's the whole thing. And after I met her, I went and spent like 3 days writing an email to her.
Wow.
Like, how do I even, and so I talk about this whole process and talk about the whole thing. And I ended up getting invited to lunch at her house. And so we...
One-on-one or with a small group?
One-on-one. Yeah, I didn't know until I showed up, but I spent days like looking at all the things I was gonna, like, how do you bring her a
gift?
Yeah.
The woman who has it all.
Yeah. And so I won't give it up, but what I brought her is so crazy. It's so crazy. And it'll make everyone who reads it feel
And you
really
get a
positive.
car. Yeah.
No, I know. I was like, what do you bring? And anyhow, after the day we had lunch, we spent a few hours together. And again, only sharing this because she has blessed it. She read the book cover to cover and gave me her blessing to share this story. But I left her house, and as I was leaving, she gave me her cell phone number. Mm-hmm. And she said, here's my number. Call me anytime. She's like,
You put the number in the book?
oh my gosh, no. No, but
it's on page 100. No, I'm kidding.
And this is recent, right? So she says, well, within the past couple of years, she said, you can call me anytime, like call me anytime. And I was like, thank you. And we did a video and all these things. To this day, Lewis,
You never called her? You never called her?
I text her.
Yeah.
I email her.
I would never call either.
Really? Okay, help me figure this
I would
out.
have only texted and just be like, hey, what can I do for you? How can I serve?
Yeah, and I realized, so if I have like a show, so I did a show with her friend Gail and and I'll ask her for feedback or this or that, and she's like, do you want the truth? And I'm like, yeah, please. And I'll text her, I'll call, but every time I text her and I email her, but every time I want to share something with her, even just anything, I don't call. I haven't called to this day.
I know.
And I was trying to figure out, why haven't I?
Why haven't you?
Like, I'm the person that literally in my heart and soul managed to go from Denny's waitress to billion-dollar entrepreneur, because I learned to believe in myself and believe I belong in the room and overcome rejection, overcome fear, but I am still a work in progress, right? And I'm like, I'm not calling Oprah because at a deep, 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 deep level, I still don't think my vibration is high enough to like be with hers. And I know that's a lie. I know
so
it's a lie.
You've never called her?
Never called her. I know.
You should call her right now.
Oh my gosh. I know, but
you should call her right now. You should. I think it'd be powerful to see if she picks up. To just say, hey, I appreciate you. That's it. Don't ask for anything. Just call her and see if you want to.
See, if I do it, it needs to feel like it's the exact...
Do it when you feel ready. Yeah. But I'm throwing it out there.
Now.
Throwing it out there. Just to tell her what you appreciate.
Do you have these moments? Because I think maybe people... And by the way, I know anytime we feel like we're not worthy of being in the room with someone else, of being at their level, it's a lie we're telling ourselves. I know that, right? And even for me, it's still a work in progress for everything. And I was like ashamed and embarrassed when I realized why I hadn't called her. Do you know what I mean? And like, I'm the best freaking friend, and I have everyone, right? Like, I wouldn't have written a word unless she had blessed it in the book.
Course.
Like, I'm so loyal to people. So it's like, you know what I mean?
She told you to call.
I know.
A couple of years ago,
I know,
right?
yes.
On your drive home, you should call her.
Yes.
And just say, hey, I was just thinking about you and I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Don't ask for anything. Just say, hey, just want to see how you're doing. I appreciate you.
Is there anything you're afraid of where you haven't done like that? You haven't done it yet? Would you call her?
I'm the type of guy that I'm similar to you, but not because I wouldn't call her. It would just be, I have friends who I know are so busy or extremely successful, and I just see how busy they are that I don't want to bother calling them, that I'll just text them or send them a voice message or a video message.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I'm here for you. If you need anything, let me know.
Yeah.
And it's just, I know they're easier to respond over text, and maybe they would pick up or not, but it's just...
What are areas you have doubt that you struggle with doubting still? Have you like mastered it all?
No, I haven't mastered anything, I don't think. That's why I'm always learning, but things I doubt. before I answer that, I want to make sure I close the loop on Oprah, and then I'll answer that question. What is the greatest advice she has taught you from the first time you met her till now?
So her advice was Maya Angelou's advice, which she shared over and over. She said she's learned this lesson a few times, which is, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time, which is Maya's words. And it's actually something that's so hard to do. I go into in my book about a lot of stuff, from being like the rug being pulled out from underneath me, learning I was adopted in my late 20s by surprise. Like, there's so many things I go into this book on about how to handle when they happen in our personal lives and in relationships and all that.
You didn't know you were adopted until you were in your 20s?
Yeah, until my late 20s. I found out by accident. Yeah, and then I went on a 5-year search of trying to find my birth mom. And so it was like 5 years of thousands of women, calling thousands of women by this name. Yeah, and I go in and I feel like,
Did you ever meet your mom?
I have, and then that's a whole thing. I think you're halfway through the book, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's some stuff in there, and I share it. 95% of this book is stuff I've never shared before. Personal lessons, professional lessons.
What was the first thing you said to your mom? Your birth mom?
It's a story, Lewis. You have to, the first thing that happens after 5 years of searching for her.
Gosh.
Yeah, after 5 years of searching for her and watching the adoption shows where people go running to each other, in the wheat fields,
that's not happening.
Embrace.
That didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
No.
When I finally found her and reached out to her via email, with getting her info finally, it's a long story, so I share how it happened in the book. But
you email her.
I email her, and the day I did, everything disappeared. Her social media, everything was gone.
Shut up. So you followed her. You could see her stuff online, Facebook, or wherever it was.
Within 24 hours of finding her, I found out everything gone.
Like LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever,
Everything.
Twitter.
Yeah.
No way.
And I didn't know
when
why.
Was this?
When was
How old were you?
In my 30s.
30s. Wow.
Yeah.
It's like a couple years ago, right?
Yeah. And so so at the time it felt like she gave me up again.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I talk about that process of, and it's a beautiful story though that's still unfolding right now, and I talk about how we mend relationships in our lives and how we handle things when we feel, because my parents who raised me didn't ever want me to know, and so
did you feel abandoned by them by never telling you?
A little bit, and I also felt like it was like the rug just got pulled out from underneath me, and I went on this journey of who am I?
Well, living a lie.
Yeah,
they weren't being
exactly.
I understand they were trying to protect you or whatever, but it's like eventually you'd find out, right?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, now with 23andMe, it's like, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a total accident. So I talk about that process too of how do you handle that when somebody. I love my mom who raised me more than anyone on the planet. And that's who I thought was the closest person to me in my life. I mean, she still is, but what do you do when you feel like someone betrays you? And so it's been a journey. There's so much in this book. That's why I was laughing in the beginning. I'm like, oh, you're halfway through. Okay, get ready.
I know that as we had talked before, I know you were speaking at an event for Erwin McManus, and I saw you, I think last year, spoke at an event for John Maxwell. And so I know you've been able to be around a lot of amazing people. You mentioned Oprah earlier, and being around some of these incredible people. What is something maybe you've learned, or maybe something somebody said to you that is maybe the biggest thing you've learned, or the best piece of advice you've ever received from some of these incredible people?
Well, I think the most powerful thing I've learned is that every single one of them deals with self-doubt too. Every single one of them is a lifelong student, constantly working on building their own self-worth. Right? John Maxwell, in his 70 books he's written, and millions and millions and millions of copies, and so many millions of people he's impacted all over the world. He is the same as Oprah, as Tony Robbins, as Erwin. When I'm at an event with them, John Maxwell will be taking more notes than anybody. Mm-hmm. I think I take a lot of notes at events. So I would say that they all deal with self-doubt. And I want to share that because for anyone listening who thinks, oh, people like that must be different than I am, right? We're in this technology-driven world where we go on Instagram and, YouTube and all of that. And I love Instagram. I scroll it every day. And also, I don't see anyone on there like talking about all the real stuff they're going through. It just all looks so good. And I think for, hopefully, at least for me, it helped me feel less alone and more enough when I realized, oh, wow, even these touted visionaries, some have been my mentors from afar or heroes my whole life. They're just like me. They deal with self-doubt. They're lifelong students, constantly growing. And so I would say that's probably the big thing. But I mean, I grew up with 5 different families. You're being adopted, and I am so blessed and love my families. And also, I'm the only one that I'm aware of anybody in any of my families that's like a lifelong student that wants to go, that gets off a stage at a John Maxwell event and then sits there and watches the other speakers and take notes because I love it. You know what I mean? Like, and so it just, it was, I don't know. I think that would probably be the one thing, is just for anyone who needs to feel less alone and more enough, and thinking that, those people must be different than you. They all deal with self-doubt too. And I think also the second thing I would say is, and Oprah actually said this, that at the end of every interview she's done, whether it was with George Bush or Beyonce or an axe murderer, it didn't matter. At the end of every interview, the person would be like, how was it? How was it? And she said what she realized is every single person has this common thread where they just want to know, did you hear me? Do you see me? Did what I say matter to you? And for me, I took away one of the greatest leadership lessons, right? Which is at our core, we all just want to be seen and know that we matter. And I think I remember building at Cosmetics. I mean, we eventually built to over 1,000 employees, but in the early years, I could not pay what our competitors paid. But I was able to recruit away from their companies people that did not feel seen or like what they were doing mattered. They didn't have this clear vision and purpose for why they were working so hard. And when I was able to give that to really see people, to remind them of what is our vision and where are we going and why what they're doing matters, I was able to apply that lesson to employee retention, but also in relationships, right? How many times are you arguing with your partner or whatever? And if you just stop and just go, let me really try to hear what you're saying. We don't want to say that. We want to say, no, you're wrong. We just actually hear them. And that's all they need. People just want to be heard and seen, and know that they matter. So that was another big lesson. By the way,
so good.
Really fast to add this, I know it might be too many tips on one show, but I write about how to do this in the book, because in the book Worthy, and it's in the chapter called Do You See You? Because so many people feel unseen in this world. So many people feel unseen. And in particular for people, especially women, but over 50% of women identify as people pleasers, but 40% of men identify as people pleasers. When we are someone who's constantly aware of everyone else's needs and showing up for everyone, not only start to feel unseen, but we can start to feel invisible. And I talk about the importance of learning to not only feel seen, and one of the hacks to doing that is to actually see other people. And so many of us have gotten in these habits in life where we actually don't see other people. And I talk about simple things, for example, if you are feeling unseen or like you don't matter or any of those things, walking into a coffee shop. How many of us do that? We're on our phones. If someone says hi, we don't even necessarily make eye contact, or maybe we do for a split second. We go about our day. We might make small talk, but we're not actually seeing each other. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm kind of feeling that disconnection from myself or from humanity or from just that feeling of aliveness is when you walk in a coffee shop or go up to a coworker today or someone who's on your team or a neighbor, it doesn't matter, and you actually see them and you actually just ask them how they are or give them an honest compliment and just really actually make eye contact with them. At first, they probably won't even be comfortable doing it. But when you just keep that conversation going for a second and actually be interested in them, or share again an authentic compliment or observation, like, wow, it seems like you love or you make that foam so good, like, you're so effervescent, or, oh, I love that shirt, whatever it is. What will happen when you finally see them and they allow you to see them and you make eye contact with them? The moment they feel seen, and you can try this again with coworkers, doesn't matter who, someone at church on Sunday, the moment they actually feel seen by you, you'll see a shift in their eyes. You'll see it. You'll see the moment it happens. And the moment that shift happens is the moment they see you back. And that moment, try this today in your life. The moment you really see them, and they let themselves be seen, which we're so out of practice of in our society. They let themselves be seen. You'll see the shift in the iris of their eyes. You will see it. And that is the moment they see you back, and the moment you feel seen back. And it's one of the most beautiful things that you can do to build connection and to start overcoming that disassociated state that so many of us live in.
You have greatness inside of you. You have greatness inside of you. And I want to share this message with you, especially if you're someone who feels like, oh, your past or your past mistakes are going to hold you back from your future. Or that somehow where you come from is going to somehow determine or limit where you're going, right? Or that maybe you feel like, because so many of us do this, we tell ourselves stories like, oh, I've failed too many times. I have too many regrets. You have no idea the mistakes I made, the people I've hurt. You have no idea the things I got wrong, the times I let other people down, the times I let myself down. And we start focusing on this story, and we decide that our past somehow now disqualifies us from all of our potential, from all of our goals and dreams, from all the things that we feel deep down inside in our soul that we're put on this earth to step into. I want to talk to you right now if you feel like somehow you've made too many mistakes, or your past is going to prevent you from succeeding in the future, or that you've failed so many times that now you feel like you're a failure. Okay, here's the deal. Every single one of us, and especially if you just take a moment and you Google right now, the most incredible thought leaders in the world, the people that have moved humanity forward, the people who have built incredible businesses, the people that have, helped heal humanity as a force for good or a force for love, and you read their stories, every single one of them has had so many failures, so many mistakes, so many setbacks, has been canceled big time in whatever version the society called canceled in that time period, right? Every single one of them. But they're the brave ones, willing to acknowledge and not let it take root in their identity, and not let their past determine their future. So I want to talk to you today, if this is you, if you feel like you've been hanging on to a story that tells yourself things like, I don't have what it takes because I've failed too many times, or I don't have what it takes because people keep rejecting me, I must just be a reject, or I've failed so many times, I must be a failure, or I'm so ashamed of the people I've hurt, or the things that I regret in my life. And when we hang on to those things, we let them take root in our identity, and then we start to believe the lie that who we are isn't worthy, and that those things somehow prevent us from a whole different, big, bright, incredible future that we're actually meant to step into. Your past mistakes do not determine your future potential. They just don't. A couple of stories. So I share in Worthy, by the way, there's an entire chapter called You Have Greatness Inside of You. And this chapter is going to be life-changing for anybody who feels like you've made too many mistakes, or you don't have what it takes, or you've let people down or hurt people, or you've failed too many times, or people have rejected you too many times. This is an entire chapter about how to tap into the greatness inside of you and not let your past determine your future. This is so big, y'all. You know, I have made, a lot of times when people Google my story, they see, oh, Jamie Kern Lima, you know, went from Denny's waitress to building $1 billion business. And it looks like a fairy tale. And it looks like maybe things must have just come easy, or maybe I was raised in a family where I was just set up to do that. And let me just tell you, I have made more mistakes in my life than I can ever count. I made more mistakes building at cosmetics than I can ever count. I have made mistakes growing up, hanging around the wrong people. I made mistakes growing up when I had really low self-worth and I confused attention with love. I made a lot of choices that I share, by the way, for the first time ever in Worthy, a lot of choices in my life that, do I regret? A lot of choices I've never shared with anyone because I was ashamed of what happened. A lot of choices that led me to hanging out with people that were not good for me. And also just like, you know, keeping people in my life who hurt me because I didn't think I was worthy of more. There were times in my life, I remember waitressing at Denny's. I remember, you know, I had these big dreams, but I just felt like somehow people like me who come from the way I was raised, like don't ever have big dreams happen to them. And here's the thing I know is that when it comes to your life, when it comes to your dreams, your goals, your careers, your ambitions, like over time, we don't perform to the level of our potential. We actually plateau at the level of our self-worth. And so learning to do the work to first identify like, oh, wait, okay, let me just look at all the evidence out there of all the people that have ever done incredible things. Oh, they have pasts too. They've made so many mistakes too. They've been rejected so many times. They've failed so many times, but they keep going. And look what happens, right? Just looking at that evidence, right? Changing that story, changing the story we're telling ourselves about our past and how it does not have to determine our future is step one. And also just being aware of the story that we're telling ourselves, right? And then making the decision to believe the truth. Because here's the deal. When we believe our past disqualifies us from everything, A, it's a lie. B, it's a thought and a story we're telling ourselves. And our thoughts and those stories live in our minds. That's where self-doubt lives. But when you tune into your soul, and if you feel that feeling like you're on this earth to do great things, to love, to serve, to give, when you ask your soul, whether it's for you, you pray about it, or you meditate about it, whatever is your practice of choice. But when you tune into your soul, for me, I pray, and I will hear the truth. My past does not disqualify me. My past does not determine where I'm going. It just doesn't. And who I am fully is enough. And you right now, does not matter what's happened in the past. If you tune into your soul right now, you get really still. You can pause this video. Pray, meditate, whatever speaks most strongly to you, and you tune into your soul, right? You're going to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are special. You are one of a kind. You are fully worthy. You have greatness inside of you. And your past does not have to determine your future unless you decide to live there. You decide to live in the past, focus on the past, then it becomes a huge thing. It magnifies and it takes root in your identity. But right now, and I go in deep in how to do this in Worthy, right now, you can literally make the decision. I'm not going to focus on that anymore. I'm not going to believe that old lie and that old story that I've made too many mistakes, so I'm a mistake, or I've failed too many times, so I'm a failure, or I've been rejected so many times, I'm a reject. That is a lie that it's time to unlearn. Okay, so awareness, number one. Number two, just really paying attention to what is that story and making the decision. I'm not going to focus on that story anymore. I'm not going to believe the lie that my past or my past mistakes are going to determine my future, because they don't. And then step three is tuning into that truth that knows. It knows what it knows, which is that you right now are fully worthy,
fully capable, have everything you need inside you right now to accomplish the greatest dreams and goals on your heart. And the most important journey you can ever take is building your self-worth up and learning to believe that for yourself. So the new story is the true story. The new story is the true story. The new story is that you right now are not your past mistakes. You right now are your present and future intentions. Your present and your future intentions. That's who you are. That's who you are. And you can decide who you are right now. You can decide what you're going to step into and the person you're going to be born to be, because at the end of our life, right? I always think about this. I don't want to look back and go, what has self-doubt cost me? And have the answer just be so much I can't even handle it. I want to look back and go, yeah, I failed. Yeah, I put myself out there. Yeah, I got rejected. But like, I'm one of the brave ones that I left it all out on the field, and look at the beauty and the magic and the incredible moments in my life that came as a result of being the one out there on the field, giving it my all, making the decision that my past mistakes, my past failures do not define me, and I'm fully worthy of stepping in to the person God made me to be, the person your creator made you to be, the person you know in your soul you're born to be.
With your journey of like going from not believing in yourself to believing in yourself and believing you're enough, how was it a decision that you made, or was it really just this, process of basically your entire life up until then?
Yeah, it's been so many lessons along the way, and so many setbacks that I later realized were setups. So many things I did wrong, and then really looking back at what were those things I did right? Looking back at when I made decisions where I listened to other people's opinions or the experts instead of actually listening to my own gut. Oh, those were the things I did wrong. When I look back at what happened, right? And it's been building on all of these things. And so, in the book, I share so many stories, and it's wild because like literally 95% of the book is stuff I've never shared before, ever. And I had this realization that a really big realization that, because I get DMs on Instagram every single day from so many girls and women and people who say like, oh, wow, you started with nothing and built a $1 billion business from your living room. Like, did you just get lucky? Or was like, did someone give you a big break? Or like, did you, right? All those things. And I kind of had this realization, oh, when you just see the highlight reel or you just read the headlines, it makes it seem like, oh, maybe she just got lucky, or she's, whatever. And it's like, you know what? I felt this strong calling on my heart that if I could pour everything I've learned into how you do that, like how did I do that, into one book, that would be of service to other people, right? And so like, for example, I'm donating 100% of the proceeds, by the way, every penny from the book. I'm literally purely just doing it for exactly the question you just asked, which is to help every other person out there learn to believe that stepping into all of who they're born to be is possible, right? The thing when I look back on all of the lessons from going through years of hearing no, because I created a company called It Cosmetics in my living room, where I started with an idea and close to no money. And I just thought once we created an amazing product that worked, I thought it would just do well, right? And then I started this journey of every beauty retailer saying no, every department store, every QVC, everybody saying, no, you're not the right fit. We don't think your positioning is right. We don't think you're right for the beauty industry, all those things. And when I look back and I went through 3 years of hearing no's from everybody, and got down to under $1,000 in my bank account, which was our personal and business bank account, and didn't know how I was going to make it. And when I look back on all of the journey, like there's so many lessons I learned along the way, but one of the biggest ones and really a huge through line in this whole book is that like, yeah, I worked really, really hard, and I didn't give up. And not giving up every time you get knocked down, every time you get a setback, that's so important, because at the end of the day, a lot of people never realize their dreams because they actually just quit or they give up or they let their own self-doubt talk them out of it. So I didn't give up, and I worked really, really hard, but like how I actually built $1 billion business from my living room was like the most important thing I did when I look back at everything was like, I made the decision to believe that I could. And when I try to dissect how did I do that, that's really why I wrote this book, is sharing every single lesson on how do you actually truly peel back the layers on your why, not just do a why. Because that's the other thing too. A lot of people, when they might keep a goal journal or they might write out their goals, and then a lot of people will go another step, right? And they'll talk about their why. Like, I'm doing this for, because I want to one day buy a house, or I want to, all these things, or do something for my kids, or pay for their college, or pay off my student loans, whatever it is. And what I've seen over the years is that those whys, they sound really good. And when you tell them to other people, they like sound great. But if it's not deep, 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 deep to your core, you're going to quit. It's not going to be strong enough for you to keep going when you face all these setbacks. And so one of the things I talk about in the book was like, because I've done a ton of things wrong. And I share those too. I've never shared this stuff before. I'm actually freaking out, to be honest, but I just know it's not about me. It's going to be of service to so many people to know they're not alone in their setbacks and in their hard times and in how to handle them. But in the book, I talk about, like, I did a ton of things wrong, but one of the things I did right was early on in my journey, I knew, okay, I'm creating makeup products. And of course, I want them to work for me and my rosacea because nothing else will. And of course, I want to help other people. And those are great whys, but they weren't deep enough. And what I realized is, in my whole childhood, all growing up, I only saw images of beauty in magazines and on TV commercials. And they were never real, right? They're always overly photoshopped. And I never saw anyone that looked like me or had any skin challenges. And I realized in the development of this company, while I was trying to create a product that actually worked, and when I realized why didn't any other product work, and then I realized, oh, wait, I don't even know if the models are actually wearing the product they're advertising, all those things, I realized, okay, not only do I want to create a company that has great products, but I want to start using models that are every age, every size, every skin tone, every skin challenge. And I want to authentically define them as beautiful and mean it and all those things. And I had this realization on the why beneath the why early on, that, like, for me, it was like, oh, I want to shift culture and beauty. And I want to do this for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and every grown woman who still does. And that why was so deep for me because of my whole childhood, realizing I'd see these images and I'd want to look like them. I'd aspire to look like them. And at the same time, they always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And so this deep why was so important. I talk about, like, how to do that in the book for yourself, for whatever your dream is. Because some people out there, they're like, oh my gosh, I really just want to dance, and I want to start painting again, or I want to launch a business, or I want to become a pastor, or I want to start a blog, right? Like, we all have these things. And I feel like we end up, right? Because here's the big thing. This is the big thing that, and I love just sharing this process in the book too, but so many of us know we have this calling on our heart, or this, like, kind of inkling where we want to step out and do something, but, like, it's way more comfortable in our comfort zone. And I feel like when we stay in our comfort zone, it comes at the price of chipping away at our soul. That's the first thing. And when we have a gut feeling, an intuition, like we're made for more, like we have gifts or talents or ambitions to offer the world, one hard part I've seen and experienced personally too is sometimes the people around us, even when they're great people, whether they're family or friends or whatever, and they love us dearly, they don't have that same inkling. like they don't get it. They're super happy in their comfort zone. And what happens to so many people is we have the volume turned up on listening to everyone around us. And then we have the self-doubt in our heads of, oh, well, maybe I'm not qualified, or maybe I don't have what it takes, or maybe I don't, other people are way more advanced artists than I am, or whatever, that inner critic. So we start to turn up the volume on our own self-doubt. We start to listen to all the opinions of everyone else around us. And before we know it, we talk ourselves out of our own truth. And this happens to so many people. And in the book, Believe It, like a big part of why I did it too is like, I talk about the journey of how to love the circle around you, but how to turn down the volume on the stuff that's not for you. And that goes against the calling of who you are and who you're created to be. And how do you add other people around you and turn the volume up on them? And even more than that is the self-doubt and everything that we all experience in our own heads, right? And I just feel like that self-doubt sometimes in our own heads is a bigger opposition against us than the people out there rejecting us or saying no, or saying you're not the right fit for us, or whatever it might be, right? And so this book talks so much. I share so much about how to break through that noise of self-doubt, and learn to actually hear your own intuition and learn to trust yourself, right? Because so many people don't even know how to tune in and listen to their own intuition. Maybe they haven't even heard it ever or in a long time, because everything around us is so much noise, from other people's opinions to people not believing in us and us getting no's and rejected, to then the self-doubt in our own head. It's a lot. And I think the journey of learning how to go from not trusting yourself to truly trusting yourself is huge. And it's so many people, it's their journey they're on right now as well. So this book is definitely for them.
It's crazy what you're talking about right now, even just, loving the people around you, but maybe turning down some voices or working through self-doubt. I was actually talking to my pastor this morning, and we were just having this conversation, and she was just saying, a lot of us have very unique calls on our life. Like a lot more of us have those than we realize. They either just don't realize them, or they don't have, the courage or the faith to kind of walk that out. And we were talking, and I was like, it's not my job to get these people to understand me. Like, it's my job to follow what I feel as though like God has put on my heart, or what I feel as though is like inside of me. And that's something that I feel like has been a constant battle, not even necessarily with other people, but even with myself sometimes, because something specifically that I'm even trying to work on now is believing like the best is yet to come, and like being one of those people who believes like, oh, I am so excited for the future. I know what God has for me. I know it's going to be even better than what I've seen. And maybe it's just the year that we've been in, or a lot of other life circumstances, but that's something that I'm working on for myself. And it's not about like being this positive person necessarily, but it's a deep core belief, not only in myself, but that there is so much good to come. And obviously we're promised trials, like that stuff will always happen. But I feel like when you're in the middle, like we talk about when you are talking about the difference between the headlines versus the reality, I feel as though that's where I feel like I'm kind of at right now, and where so many people listening to this are. How do you like navigate the in between? And not that it ever necessarily stops, but when you feel like you're in the middle and you see more in your head than you see that's like in front of you.
Yeah. So, and I love that you talk so openly about your faith, right? In all of this, because for me, that has been like the espresso in my latte in life. You know what I mean? In such a big way. So a couple things. I think that, and I have known this, but sometimes we know something, and until we actually truly experience it and look back, then we go from like believing it to like being certain of it, right? And in my journey, the thing that I know for sure, is that every setback we experience is God's way of setting us up. Every setback is a setup for all that is to come. And I believe that the things we go through, even periods like right now that you're describing of feeling like you're in the middle and you're trying so hard to anticipate and believe that the best is yet to come. Even this season, right? I believe is a setup for everything that is to come. And I believe that in all my heart. And when I look back at it, I have learned every setback and every hard season and every season that was just okay was a way of actually making me strong enough to be able to handle the weight of the big God-sized dreams when they come true. Because God-sized dreams and stepping into our calling and stepping into who we were created to be, especially those of us that know in our heart we're meant for more, we're meant to give more, serve more, create more, love more, inspire more, right? Be of service more. I believe when you're at service at the highest capacity, that it's not about you, it's about how has everything you've walked through and been through actually helping someone else believe it's possible to get through it, believe it's possible to step into all of who they are. And we can't do that unless we've gone through it all as well. And so I believe our setbacks are God's setups for everything that's to come. And it doesn't mean they're fun and it doesn't mean they're easy. When I look back at going through like the 3 years of rejection, or I look back at, painful moments, right? There was a moment where, the story when, we were a couple years into the business, I didn't know how we were going to make it. And we had a really big investor interested in our company. And I thought like, oh my gosh, he's going to change my life, because he had invested in all these consumer product companies that we all buy at the grocery store. And he'd his private equity company had invested in a lot of them when they're super small and made them huge brand names, household names. And I was like, oh my gosh. And we went through all these meetings. And at the very end, and I thought like, oh, if he invests in us, then we're not going to go bankrupt. And maybe he can help us get into all these stores like Sephora and Ulta and department stores who are all saying no to me. I thought it was the biggest, most exciting thing ever. And at the end, we flew out for the final meeting, and he was standing 3 feet from me, and my husband was right next to me. And he said, we're going to, I wanted to share with you in person that we're so grateful for your time. We're excited for all you're building, but we're going to pass on investing in It Cosmetics. It's a no. And I remember saying, okay, can you give me some feedback? Can you share why? Because I always think feedback's a gift, usually. And he said, do you want me to be honest with you? And I said, yes, please. And he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you, with your body and your weight. And when he said my body and my weight, I remember this moment where I was looking at him, and it's almost like I was watching his lips move in slow motion as these words were coming out. And I felt my whole body flood with this lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt. And it was this moment where it's like I was staring my own fear, straight in the eye. And I knew I had to keep my faith bigger than it. I also knew in that moment, deep down inside, I had this feeling, and this is why it's so important that we do the work of learning to listen to our gut and learning to trust ourselves. Because in that moment, I had no proof around me that this company would ever grow or become successful. And then I have this person in front of me that I saw as a visionary. I saw as someone who truly created stellar brands. And he's telling me, no one will buy makeup from someone who looks like me, my body and my weight. And I had this feeling deep down inside my gut in that moment that he's wrong. And I also knew if I was ever going to prove it, I would have to figure out how to believe that for myself. And the other thing is, in that moment, I didn't even get mad at him. Of course it hurt me, and I had to learn, we talk about volume. I had to learn how to turn down the volume on those words from being on the repeat button in my head over and over and over for years. But I also knew in that moment, he's passing on investing in my company because the sole reason I want to create this company, he's been impacted by the beauty industry his entire life. And he's learned, just like we all have been taught, you have to look a certain way to sell something, right? And so he was just, I don't want to say a victim, but like a byproduct of what he's seen his whole life on television and in magazines. So it fueled me. And this is part of why mindset is so important and why not slipping into that like woe is me victim kind of mindset. It was like, oh no, you know what? This is a gift. This is a setback right now. It really sucks. Like, God, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. I don't know how I'm going to keep the lights on. Like, I started going to the Costco. I don't know if you have a Costco by you, but the Costco outdoor food stand where you get the $1 hot dogs. Yep. I was like, okay, God, I'm doing that. And at least it tastes good. And I was like, how am I going to keep this business alive? That setback was a setup because it fueled me, this deep, deep, deep why of like, oh, even this dude is like this dude in a business suit who has probably never bought a beauty product in his life is impacted the same way women are by the industry. And it fueled me. And so I believe, and really honestly, the reason I wrote this book, and like I'm literally donating 100% of the proceeds of the book. The reason I wrote this book is because I believe everything we've gone through, especially once we're through a lot of it, we learn like, oh wow, the next level of success is that it's not about us. Like, how can my story, your story, everyone who's listening's story actually be of service to other people when we actually have the courage to share it? And for me, that's where I get my greatest joy. And it's like the lessons and the stories in this book, if this can save other people from making a lot of the mistakes I made, and save them at least some nights of crying themselves to sleep at night, but more importantly, help them on their journey of like believing themselves, trusting themselves, like knowing they're enough, and just deciding it's possible to step in to who they were born to be. Like to me, that's everything. And so the season you're going through right now, okay, don't even get me started right now on your calling, because first of all, you are magic. And so many people listening right now will agree with me. And everything you're going through right now is of course part of your own journey, but we all have the blessing of being able to listen to you and then actually have it fill us up and have us, all of us together, feel less alone when we're going through the same things. Do you know what I mean? And so even if it's hard right now or uncertain right now, or so many people, I mean, this year has been packed with uncertainty, right? More than so many people have ever experienced. And I would never downplay how hard it's been on so many people ever. I would never wish it on people ever. What I know through so many, and this book is so many personal hardships too, right? From adoption, surprise, you're adopted in your 20s. I found out in my 20s, to rejection, to like all of these things personally, right? I just think that they're all part of our journey to make us strong enough to be able to carry the weight of our calling when we step into it.
Thank you. Something I love so much about you is how you are so willing to share and to open up. And it's almost like you're this open book and you're trying to give value, and you do give value to pretty much every single person who I'm sure like even comes across.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.